Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome everyone in today's class for the third intermediate grade. Our textbook is Super Goal 6 and today we will cover the expansion units from 4 to 6 and the lesson is writing. This lesson will be presented by me, teacher Mazen Harbi, so let's begin. Our objectives in today's lesson. Today we hope that you can able to predict some information from different pictures and also to try to write a text about these pictures. Before we do this, let's make a quick revision on our last lesson. In our last lesson, we talked about the punctuation mark, and we said that sometimes in reading we can face a lot of those punctuation marks as they help us in understanding the meaning of any text. Not only this, but even in writing, when we try to write, it helps us to understand or make the reader who wants to read what we are writing, some of the meanings that we try to explain. And some of these punctuation mark, as we have learned, the first one were the quotation mark. And we said that beside their normal use to quote about someone what he's saying or thinking, we use them also to draw attention to an important phrase. And we have countered a lot of important phrases in our last lesson. One of these phrases was time is money. So for the reader, we have learned for the writer that when he wants to stress a phrase or an expression, he usually put that expression between a quotation mark. So as the reader, when he reads this, he knows that this phrase or this expression is of high importance to the writer, and thus the reader need to read carefully about this expression. And also one of the punctuation mark we have learned were the dashes. And we said that these have various uses, of course, and they can be used to introduce something surprising or to emphasize something or even to give an example. So we can use dashes to just to provide a definition. Maybe we introduce a certain term or a word that is new, and we put dash just to produce the definition of that word. Not only this, but also to emphasize something. If you want to highlight something, if you want to focus on something specific, we usually put them between two dashes. And also, or even to give an example, and also they are used as even as the same function as parentheses. So as with the parentheses we can see here, we can also use or replace them with even two dashes. And also with colons, we said that these are used to show the relationship between statements or that follows in an expansion of what comes before the colon. So for example, if you want to clarify something, we usually put colons before we try to do it, or even sometimes that when we want to list something that maybe has more than one level or more than one item, we usually put colons before just for further explanation of that term or of that expressions. And also, as you can see here, when we said here are some benefits of, and then we can put the colons, and even when we want to produce or present a new term, maybe to use these colons just to present maybe different synonyms of that term or different ideas of that similar term. So we have learned all of these three punctuation mark, and we said that we even have more. But what's important now at this level is that we know or to be fully aware of those three punctuation marks and also how can we use them. And also we have read about a very interesting topic, which is taking a siesta. And can you remember what did we say the meaning of siesta from last lesson? Very good. Siesta is a Spanish word that means an afternoon nap. It means an afternoon nap. And as you can see here, how we use the dashes as, in this case, as parentheses between two brackets. And even with the reading, we have talked about, or we have read about sister, and we said that, for example, at the first part, we introduced the idea of sister and how it is important and where its origin from by most Americans and North Europeans. And we said that it is, in many different cultures, it's very important. And even taking a nap in Latin or Asian or Mediterranean cultures is a very important and part of everyday routine. And also with the second part of the paragraph, we talked about, or of that text, we talked about that it is custom in Spain and how it's originated in Spain. And many believe that it was created to allow people to spend time with their family and friend, and today it is a common practice. Most people do or take a siesta when they got off work. And not only this, but especially we have learned in the second paragraph why is it, or do people usually do it in the mid-noon, because usually the high temperature, especially in summer, so this is why people like to take a nap at that time. And also, the third part, we have talked about the benefits of siesta, and we said that why it is important. And we have listed many reasons or many benefits of it. For example, for biological need, we talked about that some doctors told us that the body is designed for shorter periods of sleep and rest as well. And also, it could protect us from the sun, because it takes place when the sun is at its highest point. So this is the perfect time for us to take a nap or to rest for a short period of time. And also, usually it protects people against sunburn or skin cancer, or even heat exhaustion. And also, we have read further benefits of taking a siesta. We said that in health, studies have shown that people usually are 37% less likely to suffer from heart disease because they are taking a nap, and this is why it's very important. And also it can help to improve our memory, our understanding. For example, we have read about researchers talked about people who took shorter nap are able to remember information they have learned better than those who did not or take a nap. And also we have read, or we have been introduced to new vocabularies, new terms. Just a quick reminder. For example, frown upon, it means to disapprove of something, and we gave example of this. And also wasteful, it means to use more than what is necessary. We also gave example of this. Unproductive means not having any positive result, and this is its example. And contribute to play a part in the result. And also a dose, which is an amount of something, and induce, to cause something to happen. And also we have read about drowsiness, which means sleepiness, and sunstroke, which is a serious condition caused by staying in the sun too long. And we gave examples on all of these new vocabularies and terms. Also, we have described further, or I ask you to describe further benefits of taking a siesta, and this is a reminder of those benefits that I wrote the last exercise. And I ask you that if you have any additional benefits that you would like to add based on your experience in taking an afternoon nap, you can, of course, you can add it, and you can use it here. And the last part we did is that we had a discussion, and I asked you specifically to invite a family member or a friend of yours, or maybe a classmate, and discuss these questions, as you will come up with important answers, or even new answers that wasn't mentioned here in this text. The discussion about questions like, what are the advantages of taking a siesta? What are the good things? What are the positives? points behind taking a siesta, and also write exactly the opposite. What are the disadvantages of taking a siesta? So what are the negatives behind taking a siesta? Of course, there are good side and bad side in taking a nap. And also, the third question I ask you to discuss, which is which countries do you know that practice siesta, and do they practice in it practice it in the same way as your country? So this is very important, because all of the our unity here to talk about the different cultures and the different practices among different countries. So it's very important that we know the practices of taking a nap in different countries. And finally, whether you think that siesta is beneficial, it is a good thing, and if you do so, so why, or it's wasteful or unprotective. So explain whether you think it's beneficial or whether you think it's wasteful. So it is your time to explain as you're discussing with a friend of yours. So now, to begin our lesson for today here, I would like you to open your books on page 73. I would like you, please, to open your books on page 73. At the bottom of page 73, you will see pictures of 4 different books. And as you are looking at these books, here are the title of these books. Let's read them together, as we're going to talk a little bit about these books. So the first cover says, A Guide to a Successful Cultural Adjustment. A Guide to a Successful Cultural Adjustment. The second book says, Managing Cultural Change. Managing Cultural Change. And the third one, Legal Customs and Traditions. Legal Customs and Traditions. And the final one, it says Culture Shock. So now, before we begin, or before we start the task of writing, I would like you to predict what of each of these books talks about. So let's, for example, to the first one, A Guide to a Successful Cultural Adjustments. What do you think this book will be about? And also the second book, Legal Customs and Traditions. What do you think this book will be about? Is it about laws? Is it about regulations, maybe? And the third one, Managing Cultural Change. What do you think this book will talk about? Managing Cultural Change. And finally, Culture Shock. So try to elicit some information, try to highlight them, maybe write them in separate piece of paper, as we are going to practice now or learn our task of today. So our task of today begin with 2 questions. The first one is, which sounds the most interesting? So to you, which sounds the most interesting? If you had to pick one of these 4 books, which one would you choose? Would you choose the first one, A Guide to a Successful Cultural Adjustment? A guide here means manual. It means a book of instructions for a successful cultural adjustment that help you to try to adapt to new culture and to maybe a new place or a new country. So this is a guide, this is a book that has many instructions that to tell you so. So do you think that this or this type of books interest you, where he give you some instructions, some information about what you need to do to in your pursuit to adjust and to adapt? Or you like the second book, Legal Customs and Traditions? It means that the customs and traditions that usually are mostly legal in almost all or in every country. So is this type of book, does it interest you to learn about what is allowed or not allowed in regards of customs and traditions? And the third book we have, which is Managing Cultural Change. So of course, as we have learned that when you go to a different place or different country, you will 100% face cultural change. So what about that change? Do you think that it need to be managed? Do you think that you need to read about what you should do in order to manage such change? Or do you think, or you don't think so? You think that it's a part of life and you need just to practice it as it is. So this book talks about how can you manage it, how can you adjust, and how can you adapt fast to cultural change, whether you are a visitor of that place or whether you are a host when you visit new people who are not from your country. And finally, the final book we have, which is Culture Shock. So of course, and maybe you grasp some of the ideas based on our unit. In this unit, when we talk about culture shock, as we said that people usually who go or travel to different places, they usually suffer from what we call cultural shock, and they go into different phases when they're trying to adapt or adjust to that new culture or in that new country. So the question remains, which sounds the most interesting to you out of these books? The second question we have is, which do you think the newcomer should read? So let's ask this question, or let's try to apply it on you. If you were a newcomer, or if you are a new visitor to a certain place, let's say that you are visiting a country for the first time, okay, and you had to pick one of these books to read before you land on that place or in that country. So which one do you think that the most interesting book to you, or that the most book that will suit you? Do you think it's a guide of instructions, or B, the legal customs and traditions, or how to manage cultural change, in managing cultural change, or culture shock, where you read different stories and scenarios about cultural shock? So which do you think the newcomer should read out of these four books? Just think about it. So now, what we need to do here, we're going to write, we write about a newcomer and also a local people. We're going to write to them an advice that if they have or happen to have the chance to present it to a newcomer or a local people, what would that advice will be? So here we need, out of these four books, or after thinking and trying to brainstorm some ideas out of these four books, we need to write an advice to a newcomer, a person who is visiting a place for the first time, and also how to adjust, how to adapt, just some of the instruction based on our opinion, based on our experiences, and also local people. When they happen to have or host newcomers or new visitors who happen to visit their home for the first time, so what kind of the piece of advice you would give them? So these are very important two questions that you need to consider before we start writing. So here I'm going to write you a sample, and these are only few sentences. You can, of course, write more of these sentences about what kind of advices that we should give to a newcomer and also to the local people. So the first advice I would give to a newcomer is the following. A newcomer, when he visits a new place, should try to act as the local people do. It is a good idea to do a research and read about the customs and traditions of the place you intended to visit. So this is my first piece of advice to a newcomer, which is that when you go to a new place or a new country, try to act as the local people do. Don't try to be strange, or don't try to act otherwise just for them to accept you, for them to help you in your adjustment phase. Not only this, but even before you travel to a new country, try to do a research. Try to read about that place and also read about the customs and traditions. Read about the do's and don'ts of that place. So just to help you, as I said, in that place or in your adjustment or adaptation phase. So we have read about my advice to a newcomer. Now let's read my advice to the local people. So local people play an important role to comfort newcomers when they visited their home. So they should try to help, give them support, and answer all of their questions, especially in the beginnings. So we have learned that local people should try to help and give support to newcomers, and of course, especially in the beginning, those are a very critical time, especially in the beginning, to give them support and answer all of their questions. So I think this is an important rule that local people should do when they face or when they host newcomers. So now I gathered the first advice about a newcomer and also the second one, and I concluded my writing with one sentence. And as we said, this is a general statement that could fit all of my writing, which is that it is also important for both the newcomer and the local people to accept change and adjust to it. So as we said, it's very important, whether for a newcomer or for the local people, to adjust, to accept change and accept different people and their behaviors as well. So this is my sample. This is my writing. You can have or grasp some ideas of the ideas that I have written here, or you can also add more of your own choice, and this will be preferable. So now we have reached the end of our lesson. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.